Welcome to Real Pet Industry News. I'm Clayton and I am here with Sam. And what we got this week, Sam?
Clayton, another day, another acquisition by Nutriment. Nutriment buys Bulmers. Right. So they have acquired Totally Natural in April 2024, Natural Instinct July 2024, Petman August 2024, Pet Treats Wholesale August 2024, The Dog's Butcher this year in January 2025, Your Pet Nutrition January 2025, Pure Menu March 2025, Bath Pet Food March 2025, and Bulmer Pet Food April 2025. Wow, what a run this is. They are buying and building, and they are gobbling up pretty much 60-70% of independents. Um, what do you make of this? It's absolutely astonishing.
I think it's a smart move. That's what I think it is. I think it's a smart move, man. I think, look, if you look at it, like when it comes to private equity capital, which is what this is, so it's Swedish private equity. So they were called VOF. Now they're called the Nutriment Company. You're looking for returns, and the raw food sector is growing by 10% year on year. So if I put my money in now, like get rid of all a lot of the back end costs by merging certain aspects of it, but still keeping these companies as independents, it's going to just go up and up, and like my costs are going to go down. So I think it's great. I think it's a great acquisition. I mean, it's a great strategy. So but I think, and I don't think we're anywhere near being done with these acquisitions yet. I think this is how I see this playing out long term. Is I see this as a long term acquisition play for them to be sold for a lot of money to someone very big. Because if you think about the raw space, there is virtually no penetration by the big guys in it. So the Nestle's, the Colgates, the Marses, etc. have got
Cargill.
they've got virtually no penetration in this sector. And the sector is now, it's gone from being, was it 0.5% of dog food sold like 10, 15 years ago to 10% of the market now. It's a £350 million a year industry in the UK. That is mega money. And there's something they're not touching. So for me, like, it's a smart move because you just keep buying them up. You control more and more of the market. And then, the multiples will come in from the big guys at some point in time because they can't afford not to be part of that market anymore.
I mean, it's incredible, and the power of distribution is going to be amazing. If you are a customer of theirs, you can, if you are a retailer, a garden center, pets at home, whatever, you can buy in 3 or 4 different brands, and they probably come in the same truck, delivered at the same time. Your costs go down, as you say. Maybe customer service gets integrated, merged into one, and economies of scale. So it's a very, very smart move. Where is Nature's Menu, Clayton, in all this? Because we don't really hear from them. Nutriment have arguably ripped off Nature's Menu's nuggets, which are incredible in my opinion for portion control. Now, I listened to your interview with Peter Roy, and if you haven't listened to this interview, it's absolutely amazing. It's available at Pet Business Disruptors. That's Clayton's podcast. I highly, highly recommend you go and listen to that after the pod. But the Nature's Menu is nowhere to be seen, and once pioneers with nuggets and stuff, you don't really hear all that much about them anymore. I mean, they don't come up on my Facebook feed. It's all I see is nutriment companies everywhere, and not Nature's Menu.
They're not the innovators anymore, are they? So they were bought by private equity, which is obviously when Peter Roy left them. And they've played bringing some new products out, but there's no I don't look at them and go, wow, they're really mixing things up with how they're doing it. I look at them as like almost like legacy in the sector. And one thing you can say about them is your average bog standard like pet store across the country. If there's one brand that they've all got, it's nearly always Nature's Menu. It's the one brand that is available through wholesale. I believe Best Pet stock it. I believe Subridge stock it, and I believe, I could be wrong, but I think Pedigree Wholesale stock it. I think like most wholesalers stock it, and it's a very easily achieved raw food. But as the sector grows, it's kind of like they're in a strong position, but because their legacy, I think they've taken their foot off the gas. And yeah, if I was opening a store tomorrow, I wouldn't be stocking Nature's Menu. But there's so many other better brands doing much more interesting things. Yeah, different meat types, different complete types. There's just so much more interesting stuff going on out there. And yeah, I don't see long term like where their growth is coming from, because I think Nutriment are just so much stronger, so much more innovative. And look, the one thing they had was the nuggets, which obviously Nutriment has now done. But I still think even the nuggets, look, the nuggets were fantastic like 10, 15 years ago, because we'd all forgotten how raw worked. But we've moved into a new era of raw where you have like a company like Bulmers that has just been bought out, which their prime product is the 80-10-10, where you buy just these little chubs of meat, you add your bits and pieces to it, and that's a massive part of the market as well. So it's interesting to see where Nature's Menu will go from here, and whether they can pick up anything and actually secure their market, because I think if they're not careful, they could be easily knocked out of a hell of a lot of stores across the country by how much better Nutriment are becoming.
Where is the money in raw food? Which segment of the population are we aiming at in terms of if we have a brand, an existing brand? Virtually all these companies have a puppy pack, a senior. They target existing raw feeders. They rip each other off on Google Ads and pay per click. If you type Bella and Duke onto Google, something else will come above Bella and Duke, and vice versa. So these are all either trying to compete for the same customer, or I don't really understand what the strategy is. If you are after everyone, are you actually trying to do anything different? And if you're not doing anything different, can you actually market penetrate a bit more? Wouldn't it make sense for a lot of these companies to just concentrate on smaller cohorts of customers? For example, Nutriment have a low purine range, right, for Dalmatians or whatever. Maybe that could work. Maybe like a true working dog food, which again is Nutriment, but aimed just at working dogs and not being a generalist. I don't really understand a lot of these strategies because they all seem to have the same strategy. Nature's Menu is probably the first one you started with. I would say 5 years ago, 10 years ago. You're new to raw feeding. Look at these nuggets; they're amazing. And then you go onto the forums, and people were feeding straight 80-10-10s without rice, because Nature's Menu contained rice, 19% rice last time I checked in the base nuggets. And you're like, oh, well, if I'm a raw feeder, I'm against rice and grains. So why am I feeding my dog grains at a premium? I'm going to move on to something else. But that was the gateway into the industry. What I see a lot of companies now is that they go after everyone. It's like, this is who we are, who we targeted. We target everyone. Are there any pockets that you think would be useful to these companies?
Well, look, so I actually think like the pay-per-click thing online, you're really just all fighting over the same market. I agree. I think it's like, so Bella and Duke do it. One of the most notable is Bella and Duke doing it. But I actually think the growth in the raw food industry is coming through raw food stores. like and how many of those have opened up. So I did the Harrogate show, the Pat's Harrogate show in about 2011ish. With natural treats, and that was the year I really noticed how many of these were starting to spring up, and then within 7 or 8 years of that, so by like the late 2010s, there was a plethora of raw food stores across the country, and these are where people are being dragged into because anyone who has like an issue with their dog's diet, or people who are like really starting to look into things, they're getting dragged into these specialty ones. And this is where average pet shops are losing out because they're not moving with the times and having half a dozen freezers, all different brands. And I walk into pet stores and they've got 2 or 3 Nature's Menu freezers and that's it. And it's not enough variety. It's not enough to really bring those raw feeders in. And look, if I said there's growth in other areas, I think you're right. Things like the low purine are good, but I think we could do more in terms of breed-specific diets, in terms of like northern breeds, for example, or sort of slow release proteins, things like that, to actually target more individual customers. Bit like the raw cannon model, but with actually good food as opposed to stuff which is a bit more questionable. So I think there's still places we can move in terms of how we get to where we want to go. I mean, you could have an active dog one, or like a not so active dog and that sort of stuff. And we already have that with senior, but I think just marking it to certain segments is more sensible. So stuff and trying to make things more, let's say, breed type specific, rather than at the moment walking in and going, well, I've just got a range of different meats, trying to put stuff together which targets certain dogs and certain conditions and that sort of stuff.
You have, broadly speaking, 3 main categories in pet food. You have kibble, you have cooked foods, and you have raw foods. Now, which market segment is growing faster and which market segment is more profitable, or more profitable? Because butternut box and on a lot of these companies aren't making money because they're just spending a lot of money on marketing, but the category actually is growing, or the customer is aware it exists. So if you had a company tomorrow, if I gave you some money, where would you want to be, and why?
And look, as much as I'm like, I think the trouble is when we're in the industry, we can look at too much of what's growing rather than where the actual meat of the industry is. And I think you can be against it or not, but I think kibble is still like, most of the market. I mean, look, raw food has increased to 10% of the market, but that's not very big, even still, even though it's massive compared to where it was. I think that there's a lot more fighting going on there and a lot more innovation in that sector. And like the wet food market, like the cooked food market, and that, whether that's butternut box or whether that's nature diet or whether that's fourth glade or whatever, I think it doesn't have a huge amount of scale either. I think like if you gave me enough money, I think kibble is where it is, and I think there's a lot of innovating you can do within the kibble market to actually gain proper traction. Because I feel like kibble's almost being left alone in some regards, because people are putting money into alternative sectors like the cooked market and like the raw market, because that's where the bigger growth is. And the kibble market as a percentage of the market is declining, but it's hard to decline. You're going to decline when you control so much of the market, to be honest. But it's still the easiest things to move around. It's still one of the most profitable parts of the sector, and it's just got a lot more opportunities than the others.